The heavy, loud roar of a diesel engine brutally filled the quiet morning air in our driveway, a harsh sound that instantly ripped me out of my peaceful state. I leaped out of the house barefoot, pure, cold panic seizing my chest, and saw a huge, aggressive tow truck reveering quickly toward the exact spot where I always parked my car. I started yelling with all my might. "Stop right there! What are you doing with your clamps? That is my personal car." My father stood nearby, completely calm and emotionless, holding a clipboard in his hand. He signed a piece of paper with a quick, final, and brutal flick of his pen. My mother stood rigidly beside him, her expression completely hard and unforgiving. "It is time to stop being so ridiculously dramatic, Zella," she muttered coldly, refusing to meet my frantic eyes. "This is a necessary sacrifice for your sister Ria's important wedding, and you know this is for the best." The words she spoke were like sharp, tiny needles hitting my skin. In that terrible, life-altering moment, I understood the full, bitter truth. My name is Zella Vaughn, and on that cruel morning, my own parents, the people who were legally and morally bound to protect my interests, chose to sell my hard-earned dream right out from under me without a single thought for my feelings or my future. I chased after the enormous tow truck as it quickly pulled away from the driveway, running as fast as I could down our street. The rough, hot asphalt scraped and burned the bottom of my bare feet, and I screamed desperately until my throat was completely raw and painful, begging the driver to stop the vehicle. The driver, following my father's instructions, simply sped up slightly, pulling my precious car farther away. I glanced back frantically and saw Ria, my older sister, standing casually on our front porch. She was holding her phone, clearly filming the entire humiliating scene for her own amusement, and laughing loudly at my distress. "Relax, Zella. Don't be such a drama queen. It's just a car, and it's not like you needed one anyway," she called out to me dismissively, as if my expensive, hard-won car were just an old, broken toy. Her laughter, high-pitched, cruel, and completely victorious, echoed painfully in my ears, sounding like the final bell of complete betrayal. My beautiful car, the one I had spent 3 agonizing years of my life saving for and fixing up, the one that represented my complete freedom and independence, was rapidly disappearing over the distant hill. My heart shattered into countless, unusable pieces. I eventually walked slowly back toward the house, my spirit crushed, the resulting silence in the driveway feeling incredibly heavy and deeply suffocating. I found my parents inside the living room, sitting comfortably on the expensive sofa, acting as if they had just returned from a completely normal trip to the corner store. My mother began to speak first, her voice maddeningly calm and completely reasonable, which made my blood boil. "Zella, darling, you will most certainly get another car eventually. This is just a small, temporary inconvenience, dear." She carefully smoothed a non-existent wrinkle from her expensive silk dress. "But your sister Ria's perfect, once-in-a-lifetime wedding, the most important day of her whole life, must be fully funded. We had to make difficult adult sacrifices for the entire family." My dad, nodding in complete agreement, leaned forward with his usual air of condescending authority. "We raised both of you equally, Zella. This large financial contribution is simply your duty to give back to the family who supported you for so long. It is the morally right thing for you to do." I stood there, speechless with rage, the sudden mixture of anger and a deep, painful nausea rising in my throat. 3 full years of late-night shifts and meticulously saving every cent. That car was not just a collection of metal. It was my true freedom, my independence, and my only personal major purchase. Now, they were telling me that taking it was simply their right as my parents. I felt like I was physically suffocating. The argument quickly escalated into a full-blown verbal war, the most intense fight we had ever experienced as a family. I shouted, demanding to know how they could legally take possession of my car. "The title is completely in my legal name. What you did is absolutely illegal," I cried out, my voice cracking with terrible pain and frustration. My father just smirked, a cold, empty look that made my stomach turn. "Not anymore, Zella. We expertly handled the proper paperwork down at the Department of Motor Vehicles this very morning. The title has been legally transferred, and the sale is officially final and completed." The sudden, cold shock of that massive revelation hit me like a physical punch. They hadn't just sold the car. They had expertly manipulated the legal system to execute their theft. The betrayal was now complete, total, and completely irreversible. My mind kept returning to a horrible, imaginary picture. Rhea, sitting somewhere in a silk bridal gown, happily sipping expensive champagne, while my parents calmly signed away my hard-earned savings and my legal ownership. The most painful realization was knowing that they had secretly planned all this horrific deception, every single detail, for weeks or even months. There was absolutely no trust remaining in that toxic house, only deep, seething, permanent deceit. Later that same night, after the argument had finally subsided into a long, tense, awful silence, I approached the door to my own bedroom. I tried to insert my key into the lock. My key slid in, but it wouldn't turn. It felt completely dead. I looked closely and realized the lock cylinder had been quickly replaced with a new one. I knocked loudly, aggressively, demanding to be let back into my own private room. My mother's cold, muffled voice came clearly through the thick wood. "We honestly think you are completely overreacting to this situation, Zella. You clearly need time away from us to cool down and reflect on your completely ungrateful attitude. Why don't you just go stay with one of your friends for a while until Rhea's big wedding day is finally over?" I stood frozen, staring blankly at the locked door, instantly realizing I was officially and permanently locked out of my own home, a cruel punishment for daring to question their monumental theft. The underlying message was brutally clear: obey their rules without question, or be immediately thrown out onto the street. I grabbed the single, small backpack I had quickly filled with essentials during the fight and walked out the front door for the final time. I willingly left behind all my remaining possessions, my clothes, and years of childhood memories, but I walked away with the only thing that truly mattered to me: my absolute dignity and my complete, unbending resolve to never let them successfully control me again. Life immediately outside of their controlling house was instantly difficult, incredibly humbling, and completely exhausting. I was forced to crash uncomfortably on the floor of my coworker's tiny, crowded apartment, and I had to borrow his old, dented, sickly green hatchback car just to drive to my 2 minimum-wage jobs. The small, noisy car sputtered and complained loudly at every single turn, a painful, frustrating contrast to the smooth, powerful rumble of my beautiful Mustang's engine. One afternoon, stopped at a long, boring red light in the bustling downtown shopping district, I glanced to my left side. My heart stopped beating entirely. There it was in all its polished glory. My beautiful silver Mustang, polished until it gleamed and shone, sitting proudly and completely illegally outside a fancy bridal shop. A massive, ridiculous, and incredibly tacky sticker that read, "Just engaged," was carelessly plastered across the back window. Rhea was likely inside right then, paying for expensive dresses and jewelry with the money stolen from my car. The loud, mocking echo of Rhea's laughter from the driveway immediately came back into my head, sharp and clear. The complete lack of shame, the sheer carelessness of them using my stolen car for their wedding errands, hit me hard. It was like they were directly daring me to challenge them, rubbing the painful theft right in my face, and making a cruel joke of my significant loss and my current struggle. I felt hollowed out, completely beaten down, and utterly demoralized as I started my busy shift at the loud cafe that evening. I vented the entire horrible story of the Mustang, the tow truck, the forged title, and the lock change to my boss, a kind, older man named Cashin. He listened patiently to every word, his face growing serious and contemplative with every awful detail I shared. "That's seriously messed up, Zella, and totally unacceptable," he said quietly, shaking his head slowly in disapproval. He paused for a moment, then offered me a critical piece of advice. "You need to go talk to my mechanic friend, a man named Kieran. He works mostly with classic, expensive cars and specializes in older, rare models. Take him your old photos of the car and the VIN number you wrote down. Just tell him I sent you directly." Something about this entire, quick sales story feels very wrong and deeply suspicious to me. Cashin's quiet doubt, his completely unexpected and kind support, instantly sparked a new, powerful curiosity in me. What if there was much more to this awful story than just a simple, cruel theft? What if the car was worth far more than I had ever remotely known? I immediately knew I had to find Kieran. The chance to uncover the true, complete truth, however painful it might be, felt like the only path forward for me now. The very next day, I nervously showed Kieran the blurry, amateur photos I had taken of my Mustang over the past few years, pointing out the unique, custom silver paint job, and the specific engine details I remembered. I gave him the VIN number I had carefully written down from my old insurance papers. Kieran, a muscular man with powerful, permanently grease-stained hands and quiet, intense, focused eyes, worked on his old, slow computer for a few silent minutes. Then he stopped everything suddenly, his head snapping up to look at me. His face went instantly and alarmingly pale as he looked back at me. "Zella, I absolutely need you to listen to me right now and pay close attention," he said, his voice dropping low and becoming incredibly serious. "Your car wasn't just a simple, everyday Mustang. It was a severely limited, custom-restored 1970 model. Your late grandfather, Liam, personally restored it from the very ground up himself. That specific vehicle is a rare collector's edition, a genuine piece of automotive history and art. That car is easily worth well over 6 figures, maybe much more, to the right collector." My entire body went instantly cold with fresh shock. My parents hadn't just sold my relatively cheap car for a little extra spending cash. They had sold an irreplaceable heirloom, an incredibly valuable piece of family history, for a huge, life-changing amount of money. And they had greedily kept the entire massive profit for themselves and Ria's ridiculous, massive wedding. The terrible, shocking realization about the car's true, incredible collector value made me feel instantly sick with a new wave of deep betrayal. I immediately raced across town to my beloved grandmother's quiet house, the only family member I still fully trusted in this world. I confessed the entire horrible, complex story to her. She looked incredibly sad, but surprisingly, not at all shocked by my parents' extreme greed. She calmly gave me the exact location of my late grandfather's important legal documents. Hidden deep inside an old, dusty leather box, I finally managed to find a clear copy of my grandfather's final, legal will. I read the specific section about the car extremely carefully, my eyes scanning the official, legal text. It explicitly and clearly stated, "To my cherished and talented granddaughter, Zella Vaughn, I happily leave the fully restored silver Mustang, which I dedicate as a permanent, lasting symbol of her complete independence and freedom." The will was correctly dated and completely legal. My parents hadn't just lied to me about the title. They had knowingly broken the law, directly defied a final, legal document, and stolen a valuable, irreplaceable heirloom. The sharp pain of the theft turned instantly into a powerful, icy, and completely unbending resolve to seek full legal justice. My wonderful grandmother calmly helped me quietly retrieve the official sale record and the title transfer document from the Maine Department of Motor Vehicles office. The documents were official, signed, and extremely important. My heart hammered loudly and anxiously in my chest as I closely examined the paperwork that officially marked the end of my legal ownership of the Mustang. I immediately scanned the page for my name and the crucial owner's signature line. I spotted it instantly. The signature was there, but it was visibly shaky, poorly spaced, and completely unlike my elegant, precise handwriting. It was a crude, obvious forgery written in my mother's sloppy, looping script. The smoking gun evidence was right there, plain as day, printed clearly on the official legal paperwork. I took a few quick, shaky, high-resolution photos of the document with my phone, my hands visibly trembling uncontrollably with a powerful mixture of terror and complete rage. The initial personal betrayal was now instantly upgraded into concrete, undeniable evidence of a major criminal act. They had crossed a legal boundary that they could never come back from. I felt the powerful, heavy weight of the legal truth land squarely on my shoulders. It was time to stop being purely angry and start being completely strategic and methodical about my revenge. With the undeniable photo evidence of the forged signature securely stored on my phone, I decided to make one final, definitive, and important phone call to my parents. I needed to witness their final reaction to the unassailable truth. I called my mom first. "I have the official paperwork right here in front of me, Mom. You knowingly forged my official signature to sell my grandfather's extremely valuable collector car," I stated clearly, my voice dangerously level and calm. My mother instantly scoffed loudly, a horrible, disbelieving, and arrogant sound. "Oh, Zella, don't be so ridiculously dramatic about money. It's still all staying safely within the immediate family. It's still technically family money. We only borrowed it temporarily to help Ria, she lied easily and quickly. Then my father abruptly got on the line, his tone hardening instantly into a cold threat. You will definitely thank us in the long run, Zella, when your sister Ria is finally happy and permanently settled after her beautiful wedding. He completely and arrogantly dismissed the clear criminal aspect of the forgery. I realized they truly believed, deep down, that they had done absolutely nothing wrong. They had lost all sense of basic right and wrong years ago. I took a deep, steadying breath and intentionally hung up the phone mid-sentence, cutting off my father's arrogant, self-serving voice entirely. I didn't need their thanks or their permission anymore. I just needed my ultimate revenge, served completely cold and perfectly slow. Despite the massive betrayal and the criminal forgery, Ria still had the unbelievable nerve to send me an official invitation to attend her lavish wedding rehearsal dinner, claiming it was her only way to finally make peace before the big day. I knew immediately that it was just a shallow, public show for the few relatives who knew the whole, painful truth. I accepted the invitation and attended, dressed simply and acting quietly unassuming. When I arrived at the incredibly expensive venue, everyone was talking loudly and excitedly about Ria and her fiancé's upcoming, unbelievably extravagant honeymoon, 3 full weeks in romantic Paris, immediately followed by a luxurious week in the Swiss Alps. They talked openly about the first-class flight tickets and the high-end luxury hotel suites. I sat silently in a corner, unable to eat, doing the clear math in my head. The Mustang's huge collector value, the estimated 6-figure price tag, had easily paid for this entire elaborate trip and probably financed much more of the wedding. The cruel realization that my stolen freedom and hard work were fully funding their romantic excess, and greed made me feel physically sick to my stomach. I stayed for less than an hour, watching my parents beaming proudly at Ria's insatiable greed. I knew then that I wouldn't just be taking my revenge. I would be forcefully taking back my entire self-worth and my stolen independence. As I quietly excused myself and began to leave the loud, celebratory dinner early, Ria suddenly rushed over to me, grabbing my arm with a tight, fake, and unnerving smile plastered across her face. She was holding a small, heavily embossed white envelope. "Wait just a minute, Zella. I have something special just for you," she said loudly, her eyes glinting with a smug, mean amusement. I slowly took the small, heavy envelope, knowing with dread that this was just another planned, cruel act designed to hurt me. I carefully opened the card inside and read the professional, printed text. It wasn't a guest invitation. It was a formal, written invitation to be a server at the actual wedding reception, helping out the catering staff with the guests. "At least this way you'll have a proper, honest job to do that day, Zella," she whispered loudly, her smirk wide and completely victorious, making sure I heard every word. I carefully folded the humiliating card slowly, feeling the complete weight of her public humiliation attempt. I looked at her, but I didn't utter a single angry word. My complete silence was now my strongest shield, and my controlled anger was building into an incredible, fierce, contained heat deep inside me. Her horrible insult, her casual, public cruelty, burned much hotter and deeper than any shouted word ever could have. I calmly walked out of that expensive building and promised myself that Ria would never forget that upcoming wedding day, no matter what massive cost my final plan required. I drove the borrowed, sputtering, noisy hatchback directly to Kieran's large, dusty garage. I didn't even bother to knock on the door. I just walked straight in, still covered in the heavy, smoky smell of my coworker's small apartment, and found him quietly wiping oil off his massive hands. "I'm completely done, Kieran," I said, my voice completely flat, cold, and final. "I am absolutely done being their personal, obedient doormat. They truly think they have won completely. They truly think I am utterly powerless." I quietly told him about the humiliating server invitation. Kieran listened intently, his face full of quiet, unwavering respect and sympathy. "So, what is your official plan now, Zella?" he asked gently, his eyes focused on mine. I looked around his large garage, and my eyes landed firmly on a huge, dusty, mysterious shape completely covered by a thick canvas sheet in the far corner. "My final plan," I declared firmly, pointing straight at the large, silent lump, "is to finish my grandfather's other major project. I want to make that forgotten thing shine brighter than Ria's massive, expensive engagement ring." Kieran finally smiled, a rare, genuine smile that clearly reached his serious eyes. "Revenge is always best served fully restored and perfectly polished, Zella. Let's make that classic thing roar again, one last time." My carefully planned revenge had officially begun, disguised as an intense, difficult, and demanding restoration project. The entire restoration project immediately demanded far more money, rare parts, and sheer effort than I could possibly provide on my own, so Kieran suggested a radical but practical idea: checking the official public records for my grandfather's other registered assets. My parents, he explained, had kept a massive, hidden storage unit under their names after my grandfather died, falsely claiming it contained only old, worthless junk. I used a simple pretext to quietly get the official access paperwork and immediately drove to the large, dusty storage facility. Inside, under a thick, heavy layer of dust and grime, I found much, much more than just old junk. The large unit was filled with incredibly valuable old car parts, detailed engineering notebooks, dozens of beautifully handwritten letters from my grandfather to my father, and most importantly, a leather-bound personal journal. He wrote about his deep, enduring love for me and his powerful passion for engines, meticulously detailing his big, ambitious dreams for my future as an independent, free woman. Finding his private, genuine thoughts was a deep, emotional connection to the man I loved and tragically lost, and it immediately renewed my powerful resolve to fight relentlessly for his full, rightful legacy. The storage unit was a hidden, forgotten treasure trove, patiently waiting for me to discover its true, enormous value. I spent the next 2 sleepless nights reading and completely absorbing every single entry in my beloved grandfather's journal. The journal confirmed what Kieran had strongly suspected all along. My grandfather had secretly and lovingly left me 2 incredibly valuable collector cars in his final, detailed wishes: the beautiful silver Mustang, which was now sold and gone, and an amazing, rare 1968 midnight blue convertible, which was currently hidden and quietly waiting for me in the storage unit under the thick, dusty canvas sheet. He had meticulously detailed the exact location of the convertible's official legal title and registration papers inside the journal itself. The key, pivotal fact was that the convertible, unlike the Mustang, was legally registered under a separate, complicated trust that my parents, in their rush to greedily steal the instantly valuable Mustang, had completely overlooked and never touched. They hadn't managed to steal everything from me after all. I still held an enormous, powerful, and secret asset, a physical symbol of my grandfather's love and my own complete independence. I realized that my true power wasn't gone forever. It was simply waiting patiently, hidden safely under a sheet, for the perfect, most dramatic moment to be revealed to everyone, especially my greedy family. With the full, undeniable, legal knowledge of the forgery and the clear existence of the untouched convertible now in my possession, I finally met with a very serious, well-respected commercial lawyer, whom Eamon had highly recommended. I laid out all the complex evidence before him: my grandfather's legal will, the official photo of the forged sale document, and the exact location of the untouched second collector car. The lawyer looked completely shocked and amazed. He confirmed instantly, and without hesitation, that the forged sale was a major, clear-cut criminal act punishable by a severe prison sentence. "Zella, with this powerful evidence, we can press criminal charges against both your parents and your sister right now. You could absolutely and legally destroy their lives and completely stop Ria's wedding immediately," he said, his voice firm, certain, and serious. I leaned slowly back in the comfortable leather chair and shook my head calmly and decisively. "No, thank you," I told him with a completely calm conviction I didn't know I possessed. "Pressing criminal charges right now is too quick, too loud, and far too messy for my plan. I want them to destroy themselves completely with their own monumental greed in a much bigger, more public setting. I will make my final, ultimate move on the wedding day itself." The wedding day was quickly approaching, and the massive financial and planning stress was clearly starting to get to my sister, Ria. She called me, her voice shaking badly, no longer sounding smug or laughing at all. Zella, please listen to me. The wedding venue just suddenly doubled the final price at the last minute. I'm totally short on cash. Please, please, can you lend me some money? Can you lend me something, anything at all to cover the difference? She pleaded desperately into the phone. The desperation, the utter humiliation in her voice, was music to my ears, but I carefully maintained my cool, collected demeanor. I almost laughed out loud at the bitter, sweet irony of her desperate request. Ria, I am truly so sorry. I honestly wish I could help you out, I replied, my voice dripping with perfect, false sympathy. But I genuinely can't even afford the simple gas money to drive to work right now, remember. You and Mom and Dad made absolutely certain of that. The deliberate lie was easy, satisfying, and necessary to tell. The call ended abruptly with a series of sharp, angry curses from Ria's end as she slammed the phone down in frustration. I hung up my end, smiling softly into the darkness. Karma, I knew, was no longer approaching slowly from a distance. It was already pulling up fast in the driveway, fully restored and ready to strike. The final, intense days leading up to Ria's incredibly expensive, massive wedding were a grueling, painful blur of non-stop work. Kieran and I lived, breathed, and practically slept in his large, dusty garage. We worked side by side late into every single night, painstakingly, relentlessly restoring the magnificent midnight blue convertible. We stripped the old paint down completely to the bare metal, fixed the complex, damaged engine, replaced the worn interior with new leather, and polished the exterior until it shone like a perfect jewel under the harsh garage lights. Every single screw I carefully tightened, every single stroke of the polisher I meticulously used, felt like I was physically reclaiming a piece of my stolen life, my independence, and my trampled dignity. The beautiful convertible wasn't merely a valuable, classic car. It was my true redemption, a powerful, final symbol of my hard-won freedom, and my ultimate, devastating weapon against my cruel, toxic family. I consciously poured all my built-up pain and all my righteous anger directly into that car, making sure it was completely flawless, powerful, and absolutely unforgettable to anyone who saw it. With the convertible now perfect, completely finished, and ready for its grand debut, I moved on to the final, necessary act of strategic revenge. I needed to completely remove the last vestige of my stolen car from the official wedding plans. I used an anonymous email account and sent a simple, short, professional email to Ria's high-profile, extremely expensive wedding planner. The email contained a few key, undeniable, specific details: the official VIN number of my stolen Mustang, and a brief, professional note stating clearly that the car Ria planned to use for her grand wedding entrance was currently under severe legal dispute and had been acquired through a fraudulent, illegal title transfer. The panic-stricken wedding planner immediately pulled the Mustang from the entire wedding program, terrified of getting officially involved in a massive legal mess that could ruin her reputation. This action forced Ria, in the middle of her final, chaotic preparations, to frantically scramble and find a completely alternate, much less glamorous form of transportation for her grand entrance. It was a small but incredibly satisfying victory that set the stage perfectly. The day of Ria's incredibly expensive, massive wedding finally arrived. The official ceremony was scheduled to start in the early afternoon. My parents naturally assumed I was simply too bitter, too broke, and far too proud to even show my face at the venue. My mother had already told several curious, gossiping guests that I was currently too emotionally unstable and bitter to attend, and was likely staying home to sulk miserably over my lost car. The actual wedding ceremony proceeded smoothly, beautifully, and completely without any sign of me. As the thousands of guests filtered out to the stunning reception hall on the perfectly manicured lawn, ready for the cocktail hour, the atmosphere was entirely smug, loud, and self-satisfied with the family's success. Then, a deep, powerful, thunderous sound violently ripped through the quiet afternoon air. It wasn't the sound of a normal, quiet car. It was the powerful, throaty, commanding roar of a beautifully tuned classic engine, announcing its presence clearly and proudly to every single person in attendance. Every single head, from the chattering guests to my absolutely horrified parents, snapped around instantly and simultaneously to hear the sound approaching quickly from outside the massive venue gates. I drove smoothly, slowly, and confidently rolled up to the incredibly expensive, manicured venue in a shimmering, completely flawless midnight blue convertible. My beloved grandfather's car, fully restored to immaculate perfection, was gleaming brightly and beautifully under the afternoon sun, its powerful engine idling with a perfect, deep, attention-grabbing rumble. The beautiful, deep metallic blue paint was stunningly eye-catching. The professional photographers, hired specifically for the wedding, instantly started taking pictures of the amazing, unexpected car, momentarily forgetting the bride. Guests gasped loudly and pointed, whispering to one another. I heard my father's horrified whisper clearly, even over the sound of the idling engine. Where in God's name did she manage to get that unbelievable car? How can she possibly afford that thing? I allowed myself a triumphant, silent smile. I simply turned off the key, killed the powerful engine, and stepped gracefully out of the driver's seat. I was wearing a simple, elegant midnight blue dress that matched the car perfectly, looking completely calm, absolutely radiant, and utterly unbothered by their collective presence. I was the center of attention, the true, unexpected star of the day, and I had come to collect the final price. Ria, looking absolutely furious, completely humiliated, and utterly insane, stormed over to me, her expensive silk wedding dress billowing wildly around her. Her face was completely red with uncontrollable rage. "Zella, how dare you show up here and make this massive scene? Where did you get that ridiculous car? How can you possibly afford a car like that on your salary?" she shrieked, totally losing all her composure and dignity in front of her high society guests. I smiled sweetly and evenly at her, the mask of false sympathy perfectly in place. "The exact same way you and Mom and Dad afforded this entire unbelievably expensive wedding and your fancy honeymoon, Ria," I replied, my voice dangerously soft, but crystal clear and penetrating. "With family money." I reached inside my small purse and pulled out a neatly folded stack of legal documents, the photocopies of the forged title transfer for the Mustang. I walked directly over to my completely stunned, frozen mother and calmly placed the damning documents directly into her trembling hands, right in front of a dozen staring, gossiping guests. My mother's face instantly drained of all its color, turning completely white and sick. A profound, painful, and deeply embarrassing silence spread quickly across the entire reception lawn. The public revelation of the forgery, combined with the undeniable fact that I now had the powerful, legal evidence in my possession, sent massive shockwaves through the entire family and the local high society. Within weeks of the disastrous wedding day, Ria's short-lived marriage began to completely and predictably crumble when her new, wealthy husband found out the true, embarrassing extent of the financial fraud and the outright theft involved in funding the whole lavish ceremony. My parents immediately faced a formal, severe investigation for criminal forgery, fraud, and tax evasion. The legal pressure on them was immense and unbearable. I, however, didn't personally need to press the criminal charges. I simply filed a quiet, formal civil action against them, legally claiming ownership of the convertible and demanding a full financial reimbursement for the true, high collector value of the stolen Mustang. Once the civil case was finally settled out of court, I legally claimed my money and immediately cut all official contact, walking away completely clean, legally compensated, and fully free. They had destroyed themselves, exactly as I had planned and predicted. Months later, I was happily driving the magnificent midnight blue convertible along the beautiful coast highway, the wind whipping through my hair. The powerful engine purred deeply and smoothly under the bright, clean sunlight. Kieran sat comfortably beside me, smiling easily and genuinely. I caught my satisfied reflection in the car's rearview mirror. No more guilt, no more sadness, no more desperate begging for my toxic family's acceptance or belonging. I was fully independent, professionally successful, and finally, completely free. "They sold my beautiful car to pay for a tacky, ridiculous wedding," I said softly to Kieran, looking out at the endless, glittering ocean. "But they will absolutely never, ever forget the sight of the amazing car I chose to arrive in to claim my final victory." He squeezed my hand gently, firmly. I decisively pressed the accelerator pedal, the engine roaring a powerful, beautiful song of complete, unadulterated freedom and success. I quickly disappeared into the perfect horizon, utterly dignified, completely unstoppable, and forever free from their greedy, toxic control.